What if the biggest threat to the US economy isn't war or inflation, but Beijing pulling the plug on America's AI dream? The US and China are breaking apart, and every headline about diplomacy or trade peace hides a deeper fracture. The real struggle is unfolding in silence, across chip factories, data centers, and energy grids. This is where the future is being decided. Whoever controls semiconductors and artificial intelligence will shape the next 50 years of global power. The US is betting everything on this race. More than $25 billion of new debt are tied directly to AI data centers, and nearly $50 billion more sit in Wall Street bonds backed only by buildings full of servers and GPUs. A whole financial system is being built on digital machines that never sleep. But if this fragile structure cracks, it could unleash a liquidity freeze that echoes 2008, only faster and far more global. Beijing sees the weakness. China has studied every move, and now it's positioning itself not just to compete, but to strike. It doesn't need to attack Wall Street. It just needs to cut off the flow of chips that feed America's AI engine. And that's exactly where the next phase of this conflict begins. America's new economic gamble rests on data centers. Endless rows of metal racks humming with NVIDIA chips and blinking lights. Behind this digital glow lies a mountain of debt. Over $25 billion in US borrowing is now tied directly to these AI facilities, and nearly $50 billion more sits in Wall Street securities backed by those same buildings. It's a modern version of the housing bubble. Only this time, the assets aren't homes, they're servers. Investors are buying into the idea that artificial intelligence will never slow down, that every chip will keep generating profit. But this faith comes with risk. If the AI craze cools, or if chip sales stumble, those bonds will lose value fast. A chain reaction could follow. Data center operators defaulting, investors rushing to sell, liquidity drying up across markets. It wouldn't take much for that confidence to crack. Trump knows what's at stake. His administration has tied political success to keeping this bubble inflated, pushing tariffs, subsidies, and new deals to keep cash flowing into America's chip industry. Yet even the people at the center of it are showing nerves. NVIDIA's CEO, Jensen Huang, who once praised China's AI strength, has started walking back his words after realizing how much of his empire depends on Beijing.
That China has very good AI technology. They have many AI researchers. In fact, 50% of the world's AI researchers are in China. And they develop very good AI technology. In fact, the most popular AI models in the world today are open source models are from China. And so they're moving very, very fast. The United States has to continue to move incredibly fast. And otherwise, the world is very competitive.
That admission reveals what Washington fears most: losing control of the very technology it's betting its future on. And while America piles on debt to stay ahead, China is quietly preparing a countermove that could choke off the US supply of chips, striking at the core of this fragile foundation. For years, NVIDIA ruled China's AI market, holding an incredible 95% share. That dominance is now gone, wiped out completely. US sanctions and export restrictions turned into a double-edged sword, and China has quietly adapted. NVIDIA's China revenue has crashed to zero. It's not a slowdown, it's a shutdown. But the reality is more complicated. American chips are still sneaking into Chinese systems through indirect channels. Many data centers continue using Intel and AMD processors, keeping a backdoor open for US tech profits. Beijing noticed this loophole and decided to close it for good. In a new regulatory push, Chinese authorities have ordered state-funded data centers, the backbone of the country's digital infrastructure, to stop using foreign AI chips. The instruction is simple. Replace NVIDIA and AMD with Huawei and Cambricon, sometimes called Camry, immediately. These facilities handle enormous workloads for both public and private projects, and most are heavily financed by the state. Once they switch, billions in US chip revenue will vanish overnight. This move isn't symbolic. It's a strategic strike. By redirecting demand toward domestic companies, China ensures that its own semiconductor firms gain stable income, fresh contracts, and massive amounts of real-world data for research. Every GPU replaced by a Huawei chip keeps money circulating inside China's tech ecosystem, not on Wall Street. It also gives Beijing a new kind of leverage. American companies can't pressure Chinese buyers anymore because the market itself is turning inward. And this shift is spreading fast. Provincial governments are already forming task forces to accelerate chip swap programs across hundreds of server farms. As these policies take hold, China's dependence on US technology fades, and what happens next reveals just how far Beijing is willing to go to make that independence permanent. Chinese engineers know they are still one generation behind NVIDIA's most advanced chips like the Blackwell B200. But instead of waiting, they've built a workaround that's both clever and effective. Chinese data centers now combine large clusters of domestic GPUs, linking dozens or even hundreds of them together to reach the same computing power as a single top-tier US chip. The process isn't elegant, but it works, and it's far cheaper. By stacking locally made processors in parallel, China can scale AI training without relying on American suppliers or export approvals. This approach is changing the balance of power. Every chip cluster sold inside China redirects money toward its own companies, Huawei, Cambricon, and a growing network of new semiconductor startups. Each dollar that once went to NVIDIA or AMD now fuels domestic research, manufacturing, and talent development. It's a feedback loop Beijing has carefully designed. The more restrictions Washington imposes, the more China invests in itself. The results are already visible. In October 2025, the world's top 3 open-source AI models all came from China, surpassing those released by Google and Meta. Developers across Asia and Africa are now adopting Chinese models because they're free, powerful, and easy to adapt for local languages and industries. This spreads Chinese software standards globally, the same way Android once spread America's. At home, this model revolution is feeding back into chip innovation. As local companies gain real-world data from millions of users, they can optimize their chips faster, train smarter, and design better AI tools. Beijing's plan is working on both fronts, breaking dependence on US technology while building an ecosystem that can power its future AI dominance. And behind that rise stands one critical advantage: energy. Power is the new weapon in the chip war. Every AI model, every training run, every data center consumes staggering amounts of energy. And this is where China has built its quiet advantage. Electricity in the United States costs 30 to 40% more than in China, and Beijing is making sure that gap grows wider. The government directly subsidizes energy for its largest technology firms, from Huawei to Baidu, ensuring that their compute costs stay low while US companies face rising bills. China now dominates renewable energy production. It has built more than 340 gigawatts of wind and solar capacity, nearly 66% of the world's total. Fields of solar panels stretch across deserts in Inner Mongolia and Xinjiang, while offshore wind farms keep expanding along the eastern coast. According to the International Energy Agency, by the 2030s, China's solar power generation alone will exceed the entire electricity demand of the US economy. That projection changes everything. Cheap, abundant, and largely clean energy gives China the ability to run its AI systems around the clock without worrying about fuel or geopolitical supply shocks. For the US, the picture is tougher. Every new data center adds strain to an already aging grid. States compete for limited energy capacity, while utilities struggle to keep up with demand. America's AI future depends on fossil fuels and expensive upgrades, while China's AI industry runs on a state-backed, renewable foundation. This difference turns the chip war into a war of endurance. China can afford to keep training bigger models and running more servers without burning cash or coal. The United States, burdened by high energy costs and growing debt, is sprinting while China is building stamina, and that imbalance is beginning to ripple across its financial system. The American strategy is running on borrowed time and borrowed money. Washington's aggressive push for tariffs and foreign investment isn't just policy, it's a race to keep the system funded. The Trump administration knows that the entire AI and chip buildup depends on continuous cash flow. Without it, the debt-backed infrastructure around data centers and tech expansion could unravel. That's why tariffs have become the backbone of this economic gamble, a way to keep the money wheel turning. But behind the scenes, even Trump's allies are growing uneasy. Former hedge fund chief Scott Bessent has warned that if the Supreme Court strikes down the tariff regime, the fiscal foundation of the AI race could collapse. The government's ability to raise quick revenue would shrink, leaving the entire strategy exposed. Meanwhile, U.S. sanctions, once a powerful tool, are losing their edge. Nowhere is this clearer than in the energy sector. 2 decades ago, China relied on fossil fuels for over 80% of its power. Today, that figure has fallen to 65%. By 2030, it could reach a 50-50 split between renewables and fossil fuels. Each new solar panel and wind turbine makes China more resistant to sanctions on oil, gas, or coal. As America piles on debt to sustain its AI ambitions, China is building resilience. The more it strengthens its energy independence, the less vulnerable it becomes to Western pressure, and the more confident it grows in rewriting the global financial order. The dollar's grip on global trade is slipping faster than Washington expected. Trade between Russia and China is now almost completely free of the dollar. 99.1% of all transactions are settled in either yuan or rubles. Together, their trade volume has reached nearly $900 billion, and every deal bypasses Western banking networks and the SWIFT system entirely. The official explanation is simple: to avoid unfriendly financial infrastructure that could freeze or block payments. But the real effect is far larger. It is reshaping global trade flows around non-Western currencies. Despite heavy sanctions, Russia's exports are projected to reach $485 billion by 2028, with imports climbing to $416 billion. Much of that business now runs through China, whose economy continues to grow above 4% a year. Even under pressure, Moscow's GDP is still forecast to expand by 1.5% annually, showing how deep the partnership has become. Trump claims he stopped BRICS expansion by threatening tariffs.
I told anybody wants to be in BRICS, that's fine, but we're going to put tariffs on your nation. Everybody dropped out. They're all dropping out of BRICS. BRICS was an attack on the dollar. And I said, you want to play that game, I'm going to put tariffs on all of your product coming into the U.S. They said, like I said, we're dropping out of BRICS. And BRICS is like, they don't even talk about it anymore. Scott, you want to add to that?
But his own words underline the problem. These threats are driving more countries to build trade systems outside the dollar's reach. Each new tariff, sanction, or warning pushes the world toward currency diversification. The trend is accelerating, and as dollar-based trade shrinks, global reserves are starting to shift towards something more stable and tangible. Central banks around the world are quietly rewriting their balance sheets. Gold reserves have now climbed to $4.7 trillion, surpassing the $3.9 trillion held in U.S. treasuries for the first time in modern history. This shift isn't just symbolic, it shows where global trust is moving. Governments are choosing something tangible over America's debt. The reason is simple. Demand for gold keeps rising because there are far more buyers than sellers. China's exporters are earning record amounts of yuan instead of dollars, and they have few good places to park that money. Domestic bond yields are below 2%, real estate remains unstable, and cash savings lose value each year. So capital is flowing into Chinese gold ETFs and local stock markets at record pace. This behavior is spreading beyond China. Across Asia, the Middle East, and parts of Europe, central banks are quietly adding gold instead of treasuries. The logic is practical. If trade is shifting away from the dollar, why keep reserves tied to it? As this transformation deepens, a new financial reality is taking shape. Gold is returning as the world's ultimate reserve, and that means less global demand for U.S. bonds. A problem that's now feeding directly into America's weakening trade position. The U.S. is gambling on speed, debt, and hope, while China plays a patient long game built on chips, energy, and currency power. The outcome of this rivalry could decide who leads the global economy for the next century. If the AI bubble bursts, it won't just hit Wall Street. It could shake the foundation of the dollar itself. The world is already realigning, and more nations are quietly turning away from Washington's orbit. Can America still stop this shift, or has the balance already tipped?